Hey everyone, it's Jared.
Hello everyone, it's Laura. How are you guys?
So we're really excited to be here today on the live. We're going to have Mark Queppet from the Universal Man. He's running a little bit behind, so Laura and I are going to conveniently fill the space talking about sacred sexuality, but also we're going to go on to some of the issues and challenges that pop up for people as they go into this space of awakening. Awesome. We got Mark on the line. Hey, Mark, it's good to see you.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, thanks for taking the time out, man. We appreciate you being here.
Hello.
Of course. How you doing?
How are you? Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course.
So I'm just going to introduce you to everyone. Guys, this is Mark Queppet. He's the founder of Universal Man. It's a blog, coaching company, and wealthy resource for men who want to learn power, discipline, and virtue and get back to mastering life on their terms. Thanks so much for coming on, Mark. We're excited to have you, man.
Well, I'm pumped to be here.
Cool. So I wanted to go into issues and challenges that people have in sexuality. Laura and I have been going back and forth and talking about this a little bit. There's a lot of challenges, I think, that come up with people, especially in today's modern society, access to technology, to porn, all these things that keep people from living at their highest. Can we take that conversation a little bit deeper?
Sure, let's do it.
Cool, man. So what do you see, because I know you do coaching as well, what do you see with men, and what's the biggest challenge that they face?
The biggest challenge, probably the biggest challenge is every guy's addicted to internet porn, basically. I just think that's a huge issue because, fundamentally you're lying to yourself when you use pornography, at least from my perspective. Like you're tricking your brain into thinking you're having an actual sexual experience when you're not at all. Mm-hmm. And in fact, you're actually having an extremely under normal perspectives, normal meaning the average perspective of masculinity, it's actually a very demasculinizing experience because, if we're going to put it like in evolutionary terms, when you're watching porn, usually you're watching a guy with, a woman you think is attractive, and the guy's usually got like a bigger dick than you, and you're kind of just like this like little scrub hiding in the bushes, beating off, watching that happen. And it's super embarrassing, I think. But most guys, they've been doing it for so long that they don't even register it like that. And, I just don't think it's going to be possible for most guys to have healthy relationships, be confident, be, their most productive and dominant selves if they are doing that kind of crap. Right.
See, so I'm the only woman in the conversation, obviously. So I can say safely that I can tell if I'm connecting with the guy, I can tell how much pornography he watches by how he performs, what he does, how he shows up, how he's present, and not just this is the right thing to do move, as they tend to go in stages of I do this, I do that, I do this, I do that. But the way they present themselves and how present they can be in that moment, and whether they can stay with you, because I can feel if a man is present with me or whether he's had to go into imagination and then suddenly he's no longer in the room and I'm just
because basically what happens is if you're doing this all the time, like your brain gets good at what you practice. And so if you're consistently training your brain to think that a sexual experience is like a mouse, a keyboard, computer screen, and some hand lotion, well then when you have the real thing, your body's not going to respond super well, which is why we're seeing record numbers of like teenagers and early 20s guys have erectile dysfunction, which before this age never happened. Ever. It didn't exist. But we have it all the time now. And the reason is because of this wiring. And what ends up happening then when a guy actually tries to connect with a real woman, his body doesn't respond properly. So he has to like try and like pornify it in his brain. He's got to like bring up the fantasy. And essentially he has to masturbate with the woman's body because he can't actually be present with her. And it's just, it's super screwed up on many different levels.
Definitely. Yeah, I could imagine that would kill any true intimacy, sexual intimacy. And obviously there's emotional exchange as well. And that would probably be hurt.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
Yeah.
We're really, I mean, so for me, just when I reflect back on my experiences, I've always really enjoyed having sex outdoors. like that's that. I mean, if you can, I mean, that there's definitely some laws around that, so you got to be careful around that. But ultimately, like that's how we kind of grew up evolutionary. Like from an evolutionary perspective, it was outdoors, it was in nature, it's very visceral, it's very sensuous, there's a lot of somatic experience behind it. And now I guess in the modern age, like you said, we're completely just, I'm not sure the right word here, maybe numbed or desensitized because we're just technology. It's out of the elements, it's out of that natural primal state. And I think it really cuts off the sexual experience itself.
Well, it does way more than that. Is it cuts off masculine development itself, because like yes, you're right. Like normally sex was part of a much bigger context. It was usually like in the process of some sort of courtship, whatever the society's courtship norms were. That's, that was a whole big part of it. You would have, all different kinds of things that happened during that process that were essentially sexual in nature to move you to the point to eventually, earn the woman's trust and whatever else needed to happen to, make the experience occur. Now, under most circumstances, I would say one of the fundamental requirements of the man was to demonstrate competence. He had to show himself worthy of that kind of relationship. He had to prove to the woman more or less that he could be strong, he could be a provider, he could do all this kind of stuff. And this was true even up until modern times. Like you had to get a woman to like you. And in doing that, that was one of the primary socialization mechanisms of men that forced them to become competent men, to be able to show up in the world, to earn a living, to behave according to social norms, that kind of stuff. And now with pornography, it cuts all of that out. You don't need to do anything like that to have access to sexual stimulation and excitement. In fact, you could be the most degenerate basement dwelling troll and have an unlimited harem of virtual women to jerk off to nonstop. So It's like it takes the core socializing motivation for men and completely, disrupts it. And so we're in this weird transition period as a species, really, where we have to develop new socialization mechanisms, and because it's voluntary now. You don't need to grow up and be a man if you want to have access to sexual stimulation. So I have some theories on where that could go, but we're heading into weird times. That's my prediction.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously with the discussion now is on men. There are women that watch pornography as well.
Yeah, which is becoming more and more common for sure.
Yeah. What I noticed though is when you're connecting in with someone, obviously most people can feel into the connection. If someone is a woman, say for example, if she watches things like that a lot, she can't be present with the masculine. If she's not present with the masculine also can't kind of, in a way, because I always feel like she has to be the sacred space in order for him to sort of enter into. And if she can't even be present either, that doesn't really give much hope for the guy either. So there's no healing that can take place. Because I do believe this stuff can be healed. I think the more people watch it, the more layers kind of get put onto the energy, but also the physical body. If you have to be very violent or rough with someone, it's because they got those layers built up.
Yeah, and I think, sometimes it is because the woman is hooked into the porn stuff as well. But I think more common for women is that they're hooked into body insecurity. Like if pornography is one side of the coin, like that predominantly affects men, obviously some affects some women too. I think the flip side would be like eating disorders and like essentially body worship and that kind of stuff on the feminine side. And obviously there are some guys with eating disorders and that sort of stuff too, but like that's the general trend, and both of them seriously disrupt and distort the sexual relationship between man and woman, and put massive barriers in the way between having any kind of like real loving connection. And it's it's disastrous when these two things meet, and basically what you get is the modern marriage scene where a huge amount of it ends in divorce because we cannot properly pair bond anymore because of all of these disruptions.
Mark, I really love that point that you brought about sexual stimulation being almost like a rite of passage, like with
sort of, yeah.
and I think like for me, I went into the military when I was 18. So it's all like, that was all a rite of passage.
Mm-hmm.
And I think rites of passage are so key when we look at modern and tribal societies. It's been really important to have rites of passage to get to that next stage of life and signify you're okay, now I'm officially a man. Now I can take on a family. Now I can provide. It's like there's these clear set stages. Can we talk more about how that technology is kind of killing that, and maybe some solutions and what solutions look like?
Sure. Well, I mean, one of the big concepts that I talk about in my work is quitting pornography as kind of like as the new rite of passage for the modern man, where it's like, if you go through this process and you quit it, well, then that's going to do a number of things. One, it's going to clear up all the problems that porn is causing in your life. Like maybe it's sexual dysfunction, maybe it's lack of motivation, maybe it's, some sort of cognitive impairment. All different kinds of things can happen. And so you get that benefit, but on top of that, you actually have to develop a level of self-control that was never really required of humans before, because it's not like quitting drugs or alcohol where it's like, all right, I cut off the connections with those people, I clear it all out of my house, and all of a sudden I have a big natural barrier. Unless you're going to go live in the woods free of technology, everybody's got their drug in their pocket in the form of their cell phone. So in order to avoid misusing that and falling back into that pattern, there's just an actual next level sort of self-control that needs to be developed. And so if you go through and you do that, well, then you can pretty much do anything else you want. I mean, like if you're really hooked on porn, nothing gets that much harder. And so, it's massive. So if you look at it as a rite of passage for men, I would say it's probably one of the best and clearest rites of passage we've ever had. So, bad things happen, but you can always turn them toward good if you lean into them, I think.
I think that's pretty easy for people to be able to just let that go. They have to really want to do it and understand, first of all, what it's doing to them and the problems that it's causing, and then be able to let it go.
It's not easy at all. No. Which is why I have a great career, because basically that's what I do, is I help people quit this kind of stuff. It takes a lot of work for most guys. If you quit easily, well, then you weren't really that hooked, and that's awesome. Stay away from it and move on to bigger things. But for most guys, it's going to be one of the hardest things they do. So like, yeah, you gotta really kind of upgrade your mindset, your habits, your the way that you manage your emotions. All this kind of stuff ties into it, because it's fundamentally it's an instant feel-good button. Whenever you have a problem, like whenever you're bored, whenever you're stressed, you're lonely, you're sad, you're anxious, whatever, you can press this button and you feel good. It turns all your bad feelings into a hyper-stimulated orgasm. And so it's way more complex than just taking that out, because you have to replace it. You have to then figure out, all these problems I have to actually figure out how to solve them. And usually that requires then a full suite of different kinds of modifications to your life and the way that you interact with yourself. So yeah, it's difficult.
Mark, can we talk more about the connection between sexuality and emotion? I think you started talking about a really interesting connection there between your relationship to sex and porn, and then also where the emotions come into play.
Sure. So is there a particular direction you want to take? Because I could go a million different ways with that.
Right. I guess, what's the connection between sexuality and emotion in getting things done?
Okay. Sure. So like I was saying before, like for men up until recently, it's like if you wanted to have sexual access, basically, you wanted to be attractive enough to women to be able to do that kind of stuff, you had to be competent. So sexual transmutation, that's built into our biology, and it's as simple as, all right, you're a young hunter-gatherer dude, you're horny, no girl will look at you because you don't have any status or worth, so you got to go out and earn status or worth, and you can do it because you're horny. And so it's just like, that's like on the simplest level, you've got that, right? And so if you're constantly getting off to porn, you're pretty much telling your emotional primal brain that, hey, you're being really successful, no need to change anything. So that's really not great if you're living a shitty life. So, you take that away, it's going to be uncomfortable, but you can then use that to drive yourself to be productive, more or less, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Laura, you want to go? I think we're kind of heading down the same direction.
Well, I was going to go more into the emotions. Is that okay?
Sure.
Yeah.
So with a lot of guys, I mean, it is shifting. I've seen it shifting, but obviously there's a lot of teaching men not to connect in with their emotions, not to go in and feel anything. And then you add that on top of the society that makes them not ever have to deal with any of their emotions. You have a lot of men that are very numb, and you have a lot of men that can't connect in. And I know that in my experience in the last few years, if you can see it directly, if a guy is violent, if he's rough in the bedroom, which I don't kind of stand for, but I've seen people try to approach me in that way, they're the people that won't connect into their emotions the most. And it kind of feels like every time they get off to porn, or every time they do have sex, it's like they tend to have high sex drives because they want to just release the emotions that they don't actually want to go into and deal with. Because every time they orgasm, it's like relief.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of, it's false. It's not really relief. It is for a second.
Yeah. So there's that, and then there's the flip side where you have very emotionally sensitive and in touch guys who are just weak. They just can't get, they have no fucking strength at all. And I think one of the biggest problems is that we do not have too many people talking about what it looks like to connect with your emotions in a masculine format. We have a lot of women talking about trying to teach men how to connect to their emotions, but it's different between men and women. Like, as soon as a guy talks to me about, I'm working with my therapist and I'm trying to become more vulnerable and stuff like that, I know his therapist is a woman, because that's a female way to manage your emotions. And it makes sense. Think about it. Like, if a woman is going to engage in a sexual act, that is an act of vulnerability. She has to open up. And by doing that, it makes her technically vulnerable. And like, overcoming that kind of fear is, that's the fundamental female sexual challenge. Okay. But if a guy tries to model that, it's not going to work, because he has to learn how to really take charge, be dominant, be outward in a aligned, healthy way. So like, the example that I had most recently heard this was a guy, he was like a compulsive liar, and he would lie because he was afraid of what people would think about him if he really, was honest. And so he was saying, I'm trying to work on being more vulnerable and stuff like that, and telling the truth. And while that's true, that's accurate, the context and the attitude is wrong. What he needs to be is actually more bold with the truth. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing, telling the truth, an entirely different energy. And the reason that this matters so much is because a male sex drive is a wild fucking thing. And if you don't know how to engage with it forcefully, then it will dominate you. And so that's the bottom line, is that if you cannot cultivate that strength, that fire, that force, then you are going to be a victim to your sexuality. And so, yes, you have the guys who are all like bent up and angry and they just won't look at stuff. But then you also have the guys who are too in touch with it, and they essentially go to women. You're always going to end up becoming their mom, and it's going to be, bad either way. So it's like, there's a lot of dysfunction, I think, in the way that men relate to their emotions in general. But hopefully we're moving closer to figuring that kind of stuff out.
I love the point that you brought up, Mark, about how men deal with their emotions differently than women, and the different approaches, because for me, what I look at as strength as a man is you have the ability to be either or. You can go really, really deep, being loving and sensitive, and in the next moment, you can kill someone if you need to kill someone. And that sounds really crazy, but if someone, I'm not a violent person at all. I used to be, but if I need to be violent, I know I can summon that up within my energy very, very quickly. But at the same time, if I need to be soft because, my wife is having a bad day, or my girlfriend or lover or someone who I'm really close to is hurting, then I can also be soft and give them attention and approach them in a soft way so I can make that connection. And really, I think that's above gender. I think that applies for women too, to a big extent, where it's like, okay, there's sometimes where I need to use more masculine energy, get shit done, make it happen. And there's other times where I need to be more soft and allow the connection to happen through that softness, so it doesn't scare and intimidate people away.
Yeah, I think that taken one step further, there's not even really a polarity so much. I think that like the ideal, if we're going to call it this, it's so complex, but if I was going to say that there's a pinnacle of masculine posture in terms of emotional interaction, it would be that of like the joyful warrior, meaning that like you have all of the fire of the combative side, but completely aligned toward loving intent. And we see this more or less like modeled in a lot of superhero culture, not all of them, but like basically like the wisecracking superhero, like think Spider-Man or Thor, who are just like, they're having fun while they're fighting evil. That is, I think, the most aligned masculine, where he's not afraid. He's not, shirking back at all. He's 100% in there, driving forward, being dominant, stimulating, doing what he needs to get done. But he's modeling lightness, joy, gratitude, all of that kind of stuff. And so if you can bring both of those, that warrior, and take him out of the violence and into the light, that's probably the best that you could get, I think. And women, they have their own similar sort of thing. It just has a different character, one based more in estrogen, less in testosterone. So it's just, that's really the thing that colors it all, is that we've got a masculine brain with high levels of testosterone, and we got a feminine brain with more levels of estrogen and relies more on the oxytocin system. And so that leads to these archetypal sort of character differences.
I see a lot of women, and I see a lot of my clients, that they're trying to get their men to be like them. So it's like,
and good luck being happy if you, like the poor woman who succeeds in that.
Right? Because I can understand where they're coming from, but at the same time, when I see men, like I love men and I respect men for what they are and what they bring. And in my experience in the past, whenever I've tried to make a man be more feminine or be more connected, it's not that sexy, because it's not actually what they're supposed to.
There's no tension there. There's no tension. There's no polarity.
Right. There's no, because there's always a masculine energy is attracted to feminine energy and vice versa. Even in gay couples, there's still a masculine and a feminine, and they're attracted to each other for the polarity. So, but I know, and you were saying about the mother energy, I did that for years in a relationship. You end up being the mother. There's nothing sexy about that at all. It's very tiring, it's draining, and it's not equal. But there's something about a man being able to go after what he needs to do, go and get it, but a gentle energy underneath. I think that's when it's pretty balanced. You can feel if a guy's going after things because he doesn't want to connect or deal with anything, he's just like, I'll just chase this, I'll just chase that. There's a difference between that and then softness and kindness underneath and having that drive. It feels, when I'm around different types of men, it feels completely different.
Yeah.
So, Mark, how would you say you get to that middle point then? How do you get to that middle ground where you have mastered your sexuality, you can be soft when you need to be soft, but you can also still get shit done? How do you get to that balance? I would love to hear your opinion on that. And Laura, I actually want to hear yours as well on this too, if you don't mind.
How to get to that point? I guess, it's going to be a consequence, like of what you do. It's the only way that's really a stable approach. So it's like, if you quit porn and you become productive, you're going to kind of find your way there by a matter of course, just because that's what works. That's the thing that leads to truly, stable productivity, enforced boundaries between what behavior you don't fuck with, and then it's the most effective, plainly. So it's like, you kind of just have to be dedicated to being the best, and if you do that and you have good instruction, then you can do it. I think there's a lot of guys with fantastic intentions. They're just being fed bad information, primarily by our culture, which tells women that they have to be like men and that men have to be like women, and it just doesn't work. Right. So we've got women trying to like move through the world like dominant dudes, and they can. You can do that, but your biology doesn't support you doing that in a way that feels really good. So you feel like you're constantly having to fight yourself and grind through stuff. If you had higher levels of testosterone, well, you could actually get, fired up by that. Guys, if they learn how to lean into this stuff, it actually makes them stronger. They get more hyped. They get more into the zone, kind of the more, into the shit they get. But you need to have the hormonal support for that. In the same way that if a guy, he just keeps trying to like move into loving connection and sharing his feelings and talking it all through and that sort of stuff, like he's just going to fucking go crazy because he's not wired for that. And obviously there's exceptions in both ways, but like you know, a lot of the confusion comes to the fact that just like society is giving bad information as a whole, and in some ways maybe from good intentions, because they're trying to protect the people who are more of the outliers, but like for the masses it's not working out super well, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just dipping into, I think there's got to be a balance. I think someone left a comment recently on one of our videos, Jared, about women being masculine and how very offended by something that we must have said. But I think that we have to primarily sit in the energies of who we are and be able to dip into the parts that we need. And I think it's like everything, if it's not balanced, if you're completely masculine and never taking a minute to just stop and think, oh, hang on a minute, am I okay? And the same with a woman, if she's completely in her feminine, but she's not grounding that energy, there's nothing that she can really do. It's energy. It's not real until you pull it down to the earth. And it's balance between the two. I think some people get scared of their own opposition energy. I know some women don't like pushing when sometimes you have to, and men don't like going to their emotions at all, but sometimes you have to, you know.
Well, that's where I think that I disagree, and I don't even know if it's fully correct, but like I don't view a man connecting with his emotions as a feminine act. I don't view men as having a feminine aspect. I just think that there are different modes of being masculine. In the same way that if a woman pushes, it doesn't mean that she's being masculine. It's just that she has to find feminine assertiveness. And so it's just like, I think that's where the confusion comes in, where like we're trying to say that a gender owns a form of operation, and I don't think that's the case. I think really, if we're going to talk about what is masculinity, what is femininity, I would say that there's strategies to deal with certain biological realities. So like a man who's good at being a man, a masculine guy, is a guy who's gotten really good at working with a brain that has high levels of testosterone, and he's got, you know, a dick and balls, basically. It's like, and if females, a feminized woman is the same thing on the feminine side. And it's a strategy, and how good you are at working with what you've got determines, you know, your progress in a lot of areas.
Mark, I'm interested to hear what would then be what's a balanced view for you of just being a human, whether you're male, whether you're female, like what's a balanced version of being a modern human being in the world?
The most important thing is the way that you have your identity relate to your status. So the way in which a lot of people operate is that they go through the world kind of like this black hole, and pretty much they say their worth, their value as a person is their status. So like they are only as good as how much money they have, how many people like them, how many followers they have on social media, how big their dick is, how many sexual partners they have. They're constantly measuring themselves. They feel like by themselves, they have no worth, and they need to earn all the status. And if they don't earn the status, they feel insecure and not good enough. And so basically they go through life like these black holes. The better way, the balanced way, would be to say that you have inherent unconditional worth. And it's perfectly good. Nothing you do, no status you earn will make you any better, and no status you lose will make you any worse. Now, status still matters, though. Our brain is a giant status-seeking mechanism. We're constantly concerned with pursuing the better and avoiding the worse. That's a status operation. And so, like, what this means, like loving yourself unconditionally like this, it doesn't mean that it doesn't matter, because it really does. It's like if you're saying you have a nature of goodness, it's like you have to be in alignment with your nature, otherwise you're going to hurt. So it's like the example I use is like, you see my finger, the nature of my finger is that it bends this way. If I start going against the nature of my finger and bending it backwards, it's going to start hurting. If I bend it really far back, it's going to really hurt. So like it'll still hurt if your status does not reflect your dignity. Like if you think you believe you're a good person, but you're not showing up well in the world, you're going to feel shame, and you should. Just in the same way that like if you stick your hand in fire, you're going to feel pain, as you should, because your body's not designed to withstand fire, right? And so it's learning how to move from this kind of toxic perception of like, you know, basically shame to an anabolic, growth-centered one where you can actually see, hey, I'm okay, I'm good, but I'm, you know, maybe I need to bring my status up here to reflect my dignity. And it's like, it puts you in the end result is that you can do anything in two different ways. You can go to the gym from a place of self-hate where it's like, hey, if you don't go to the gym, you're a fat piece of shit and you're not good enough. A lot of people can motivate themselves that way. I don't recommend it, but a lot of people do.
Right.
The better way is to say, hey, you're perfectly, wonderfully good. Going to the gym is not going to make you any better, but since you are good, we're going to give yourself the gift of a good body. We're going to give yourself the gift of a good workout. We're going to give yourself the gift of feeling good in your skin and having your goodness be reflected in your physicality. And so it's like, if you can learn how to tap into that energy, then you're really on the right track. And I would say that's the most important thing when it comes to being a generally balanced person.
So is it kind of like you're doing things out of love rather than out of fear? Like, I always think, go to the gym because you love your body, not because you hate it. And you're going to have a whole different workout. You're going to have a whole different experience, and your body's going to receive a whole different workout because you're appreciating that you can move rather than going, come on, get in there. It's
right.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's moving from gift-based or abundance-based energy rather than lack. It's moving from a place of already having and just reflecting rather than needing to get and earn because you're not good enough to begin with.
That's interesting because, Jared, we were talking recently about competition and motivation and like how you can get yourself, because I noticed when I had my awakening, I couldn't do the things I used to do because my mindset of how I used to do them wasn't there anymore. I can't make myself go to the gym by saying, come on, you're this and you're that. That's not in my nature to do that. So you have to retrain your brain, or your brain kind of starts to retrain itself when you awaken. And then you've got to retrain how you process everything and then how you take action on that. Because so many people are like, bro, I can't do this anymore. I can't do that anymore. I'm like, yeah, you can, but you have to come at it from a whole different space.
Yeah, a lot of guys I show this stuff to, they like realize, wow, I've been running off this black hole stuff for everything in my life. And it takes some doing to rewire your thought processes around that. And some things you actually can't get yourself to do from that place. Like if the action itself is fundamentally undignified and it's not a loving thing for you to be doing, you're not going to be able to use loving energy to get yourself to do it. Like, say, for example, you went into a career just to make your mom happy or something like that. Well, coming from a place of authentic self-care, it's not authentically loving to force yourself to continue down that road to make your mom happy. So it's like sometimes there are going to be shifts required. And that can be scary for people, but ultimately you're going to end up in a much better place.
I wanna take some questions out. Are you cool with taking some questions out here, Mark?
Yeah.
From the audience, guys, if you have any questions or thoughts about this, I'm gonna ask a couple more questions here. But while I ask these questions, feel free to ask questions in the comment section, and I'll bring them up. And if you haven't already, check out the YouTube description box. If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to Mark's channel. His link is right there below. So we're talking about really now, I guess the conversation is in terms of ways of motivating yourself, like what pushes things forward. And I'm the type, I came from a pretty traumatic, painful background. So I had a lot of internal pain. So for me, it was like the criticism voice, like, dude, you gotta fucking do it. Like, I would go to the gym and be like, my chest isn't big enough. I don't have 20-inch biceps yet. So like, I'm a piece of shit and I got to make it happen. Like, that was how I went into the military, with that mindset. And then in 2012, my life completely shifted and changed. Everything, like I swung the exact opposite. I went completely, almost, I guess you could say, super, if we want to get traditional about it, feminine. And it was like, oh, I'm just being very loving, peaceful, kind. And when I was in that phase, I almost like missed that masculine side of me.
Sure.
And obviously I balanced out eventually. Yeah. It took some time, but I guess my question would be now, when a person's going through, because I know that we have a number of people who are watching this, who are in this space right now, who are transitioning from that place of motivating yourself through you're not good enough, through criticism, to you're good enough and you're all ready. And I know for me, when I switched into that space, it was scary because I was afraid to let go of the critical voice, because then I thought my performance would go down. And in fact, my performance did go down at points. So how do you work with individuals when that motivational force is shifting from that critical voice to the more, hey, you're awesome, you're cool, you got this, but you still got to do shit and contribute to society?
So I would say it kind of depends. Again, man or woman, it's a little bit different. So for like, in general, you want the mindset to be from an attitude of gift. Okay. But for a guy, his brain is more wired toward the dopaminergic and status seeking route. That's one of the things that testosterone does. And so it's like you're thinking about giving yourself the gift of like higher status. Now, there are going to be points, especially when things get really tough, where you're not able to generate that kind of charge. And that's where you need to dip into the oxytocin kind of self-love pathway, where you're like, all right, I'm gonna do this from a place of, softer sort of self-connection and sacrifice for myself. A woman in general, she's going to have that flipped, where she's like the estrogen levels in women allows them to tap more into that loving oxytocin connection part. And she's going to be moving from that place of, hey, you just got to love yourself through this. This is being like a nurturer to yourself or whatever. But sometimes that's not going to quite kick in. And so they need to then dip into, this is also going to make you higher status, and try and hit that more dopaminergic sort of route. And so I explained that very kind of technically. So I'm trying to think of an easier way to do it. Does that make sense? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Because for me, if I have to kind of, I like that you've just said like feminine is feminine and masculine is masculine. There's just different versions of it. That feels quite soothing to me. I've never really looked at it that way. So if I was to try and get to the gym and I need to motivate myself, I'm going to motivate myself by knowing how good I feel afterwards with the endorphins, knowing that the rest of the day I'm going to feel my mind's going to be clear. I'm going to feel like I've achieved something. And I think that some people think that that's a negative thing to go into. It's like, no, I should be able to just exist and be in the now. Because there's a lot of the spiritual people that say, no, I just want to be in the now. I don't want to chase anything. I don't want to make myself do anything. But there's no grounded energy there. And then nothing ever gets done.
Well, I think you have to go into if that's your hang up, you actually have to focus on being that person first. It's like, all right, I'm going to tap into the frequency of having my workout already done, and then be present with what that then flows through and brings about. So that's starting to get into the mindset aspect of this. But I liked what you said there. You pretty much just confirmed what I was talking about. So you're talking about, hey, there are going to be these good benefits. They're going to make you feel good. Here you go. I'm going to give them to you like I'm caring for you, right? So that's the more oxytocin pathway. As a guy, the first thing you might go to is like, you want to get some sweet biceps, and then all the ladies will look at you. And that's more of the dopaminergic serotonin sort of route. Now, you both need to be able to tap into that kind of stuff, but like which one you go to first, that's really like a matter of like which pathway you're more comfortable with, depending upon, I guess experience, but then also your just general predisposition to it.
Yeah, I think it could be. I think it could be situation dependent as well too. I mean, I know there's plenty of things where, like when I take more of a male approach with my bank account. And then like, that's more of like, okay, I want to hit this mark. I'm really excited about that. And then I hit it, and that's like, well, to get here, I hit the goal that I wanted, but to get here, I feel like shit. So I think it's kind of like an ever gauging process, really. At least that's how I've experienced it. And there's things that I go after, and then I'll get it. I'll go after it in that masculine energy, like, okay, status, hit my goal. I'm going to feel so good when I hit my goal. Then I've had times where I've hit my goal and I wasn't happy. And I was like, this was not worth it. Like, I feel like shit. My relationships are shit. Like, this was not worth it at all. And then there's been other times where I have hit it and I was like, cool. Like, that's great. So I think it's situation specific too.
Well, you're talking about something different at this point. You're talking about the energy with which you then operate. So like you can be effective with dark side energy or light side. It's like the force. All right. Like you can drive yourself forward from a place of lack, and that's always going to lead to more lack. Like if you study law of attraction stuff, it's like the energy you put out is kind of basically what you amplify and you get more of. So if you're telling yourself, I need to get this number, I don't have it now, I want it, that's a place of lack. And so when you get there, you might get a little spike, a little high, but eventually you're going to find yourself in the exact same spot, because basically what you think is then charged by how you feel. And so if you are thinking thoughts of lack and you charge that with emotion and then with action, you're basically giving the instructions that you want more of that. So if you want to be able to take action from a satisfied place, basically you tap into the frequency of already having the thing that you want. And you imagine having it in the best way possible. So it's like, all right, I want to reach this money, but I want the feeling that I get from making this money to feel like, perfect, so satisfied, happy with everything. And if you key in that from the beginning, then it becomes like a tuning fork, and you can hold up all your options to this frequency. And if it resonates with that frequency, then you know it's a good thing. You know it's the right path. If it doesn't resonate with it, it's like, that's, yeah, maybe this would make the money, but it would make me feel shitty. It would be, it's all conflict based and, putting other people down or whatever. So you throw it away. And so if you tune into that end result that you want from the beginning, and then you use that as your tuning fork about the way that you navigate through things, then you always will end up at that end result, even if you don't hit the money you want, because you traveled in the way that holds that feeling of satisfaction, of gratitude, of whatever. And yeah. And so basically, if you can move from gratitude and abundance and joy, then you're going to get more gratitude, abundance, and joy. And so it's like really all about what you key into when you start moving.
Nice. I got a little bit excited there when you started talking about Star Wars. I might break out my X-Wings, my X-Wing display. So I dare reveal the world my X-Wing display. I'm going to go to some questions here, guys. So this is Annabella, and she says, I'll go to that one next. Where is it? This was a really good question. Oh, Ashley, here we go. So Ashley says, when women work out and do activities such as boxing, how do men feel about it? Does it threaten them? Exercise is my therapy, and it's really helped me overcome personal challenges.
I think it depends on the guy. I think it's awesome. I think it's cool that if you find something that makes you feel good, makes you feel, gets you working out, that kind of thing. Some guys are not going to find it as attractive, but some guys will find it more attractive. It really depends. I mean, it is possible that a guy could be intimidated by it, especially if he's not in touch with his own combative energy. But if a guy is, I'm gonna be honest with you, like, he shouldn't feel intimidated by that, especially if he's fit. Right. Because the fundamental reality of it is like, all right, this might make some people mad. I hope not. But like, just the biological facts is that like your average high school athlete, like male, is going to be able to beat top level female competitors in a lot of things. And it's not because men are better. It's just that testosterone's a hell of a drug. And like, we see that. And so it's like, if a man's like semi in touch with his own physicality, he should not be bothered by that, even in the slightest. If so, he's got to hit the gym a little bit, I think.
I think
I'm interested to hear your perspective, Laura.
Well, I agree with what you're saying, and I would put it on the woman as well, because if I see women that think that, this is going to threaten a man, or am I doing this? Am I masculine by doing this? Then she's not doing it because she enjoys. There's something that kind of gets a little bit distorted, and it's about knowing who you are. Like, if you go on to do boxing when you want to train and lift weights, and it makes you feel good and it makes you feel connected in, and it's how you feel confident, then you're not going to worry about what other people feel or think about it, because it's part of who you are. Your mindset wouldn't even go there. I understand why it could and why it would, but same as what you were saying, Mark, it's like same thing. Some guys fight like that, some guys don't. But if you know who you are and you're confident in that, you're only going to be able to attract people that think it's endearing, and it's a positive thing in your life.
Yeah, the mindset's big around it, because the way you carry it and whatnot matters too. And I mean, the thing is, like, male or female, if you're into like combat sports because you're into like the dark side of conflict, that's not going to be attractive really to any healthy person. You might find some people who resonate with it, but if they resonate with like that kind of dark sort of conflict energy, well, they're bringing some baggage with them. And so it's like, it's not so much what you do, it's who you are outside of the activity, I think.
I'm going to go to the next question here from Manifa. So Manifa says, what would be an example of female sexual energy being channeled for productivity?
That's a good question. I usually think about things from the male perspective because that's my audience. So let me think here.
Well, yeah, Laura, you can take that one for a little bit.
So here's the way that I would look at it, is like being more like, all right, what is the most like women their kind of their main status drive, like for a guy, it's like accomplishment, getting like acquiring status, like getting shit done. So it's kind of simpler and more straightforward for guys. I think for women in general, like their main sexual strategy is attraction, to be attractive, right? And so that's what they're wired for and whatnot. So basically you imagine, all right, what kind of productivity would make you into the woman that you find most attractive? So it's like looking at it from that perspective, like finding the most beautiful version of yourself and the way that she moves through the world and moves through her task list and that kind of thing, tuning into that frequency. And that's where you're going to find your productive flow, I think.
Mm. Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's sort of there's an energy of being a woman. I don't know if guys have this, but I have this as a woman. I don't know if you guys have this, but there's a level of being attracted to yourself where you're so into your sexuality that you actually, it's true.
No, I know what you're saying. For guys, it's more about respect.
Yeah, it's funny. It's just, it makes, I get it, but I don't know.
Well, I have it as a woman, where I'll be in my, like, just being in the body and wearing, like, I actually find myself attractive. I like, there's something about connecting in with your own feminine energy. And if you're in that energy all the time, then like you said, you're able to put that out there. Like, what does that mean for me today? Today, that means that I'm going to run because that's going to make me feel who I am. I'm going to go to yoga. I'm going to go to the gym because that's going to make me feel more as to who I am. And it is the attractiveness. I think people might hear that as like, no, women aren't here just to be attractive, because they're hearing it from a feminist point of view. But actually, it's true. We have this energy where we know or we feel sexy or sensual or attractive in ourselves, and that is the feminine energy. It's the flow, it's the creation, and it's putting that, like you say, into or letting it manifest in different ways.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
It changes every day, but just gotta go with the flow.
That's interesting. I get that perspective, Laura. I mean, but I'm pretty sure Mark probably understands. I get up in the morning and I look at the mirror and I just smile. I'm like, all right, what do you got to do today, man? And like,
well, like the big aspiration that I have for, like, that's actually really awesome, is like to like, as a woman, like an aspiration of like to be attracted to yourself. Like one of the things I say to guys though that seems to resonate is like, you want to become a man that you admire, because for guys it's about respect, it's about status. So it's like, can you be a guy that you would respect? And that's where you get that's kind of like the masculine form of self-attraction, I would say.
I love the whole perspective around, being attracted to yourself, because that plays out in sex. Like I've been with girls who weren't, like, they were gorgeous, but they were not attracted to themselves, and I felt that, and the sex was not nearly as good. But I've been with women who weren't nearly as attractive as those other types, but who really were attracted and in love with themselves, and it was way better, like a million times better. And so it's the energy, I think, that you bring to it, really.
Oh yeah, totally. Because if you're, again, like you're like that black hole in the center, then basically you're just going to be, the only people you're going to be able to connect with are other people with black holes, and then you're like two vampires sucking on each other, using each other. But when you're full from the beginning, like you recognize your dignity from the start, and you just radiant, you're just sharing, then you've got a truly additive connection, and it just, it's just more and more good.
Beautiful. Yeah. I'm going to ask one last question here, Mark, and then we'll close up. Unless, Laura, do you have anything?
I'll see what you say, and then I'll see what I want to.
All right, cool. So when it comes to just, like, I've noticed in my own life where I've been in masculine energy where go, make happen. And then I've been in quote unquote feminine energy where I'm like, dude, I'm just sitting back and enjoying myself and just enjoy being. Mm-hmm. But there's been times where I've gone so far into the masculine energy where I was exhausted and I was tired. And it was almost like I started attracting or bringing in those people who did have those black holes, because I was exerting so much energy out. So it was like I was creating a black hole within me, even though I'd already done all the inner work. But it was like I was exerting so much energy out in the world that I started attracting those black hole types of people, emotional vampires, or whatever you want to call them.
Sure.
How would you say that someone who values productivity, but also values their feelings and their being state, how would you say you stay in balance with that as you go and you still produce, you create out in the world, but you still enjoy your being? How do you stay in balance?
You get better. Like what you described of pushing yourself and going out and doing all that kind of stuff, you were telling yourself that's the better, that's the stronger. It's not. It's less effective. See, it attracted emotional vampires and it drained you. So that's not the right strategy. In the same way that going to the gym and completely blasting your muscles to a point of dysfunction and injury is not the right strategy. Yeah, you might feel like you're more hardcore and feel kind of cool about it for a little bit, but your gains are not going to be as big. And so really it's just about being better, I think. And so when you find more effective strategies, that expands into the energy that you wield, the kind of relationships that you, engage in, everything. So it's like, that's what keeps you in balance, I think, is progressive evolution. So if you find something that's not working, then you got to grow. And that's awesome. So you just found a place you can grow and you can get better.
And what would you say to people who the energy of failure, because they're sort of like, oh, I really feel like I need to go and do this, I need to go and do that, and then they don't do it, and then they're left with feeling guilty or feeling like they failed or feeling unworthy, all those shame energies. What would you say to someone who's in that cycle still to move through that?
So they're in a state where they are kind of too wrapped up in their own shame, where they can't get themselves to do stuff, kind of like pull themselves out of that like spiral of dysfunction. Is that what you're kind of talking about?
Yeah. So say, for example, someone knows that they feel better when they work out because it feels good in the body, clears their mind, but they can't find the motivation to do it. And so they don't go, and then they go, oh, I'm useless, I couldn't even go to the gym, and now I'm worth it. That sort of,
I think most of that is probably the way in which they've learn to motivate. So it's like if they've lived their life primarily from the black hole sort of place, then their motivation relies on them creating pain in the moment and then offering them self-relief if they do a thing. So it's like they're going to hate themselves until they do the thing. And like this can kind of work, but it sucks. And usually it's most effective when you have something external pushing on you. Like if you're the kind of person who couldn't study for a test until the night before the test, you're this kind of person. You need to have pain forcing you to do something. And so the better thing is to learn it's like how to play a better commercial in your mind. Like learning, like what I was saying sort of earlier, it's like key into that end vision of you having that perfect workout of like that feeling of satisfaction of, job well done, and learning how to like hold that from a place of self-care. And if you just hold that and you move into a state of gratitude as if you had already done it, your body's just going to respond. It's just going to happen. Like, try this when you wake up in the morning. Anyone have trouble getting out of bed in the morning? I know that's one of my biggest things. So it's like you can try and just force yourself. And this is what I tried for years. I was just like, just move one finger, but just like really just tried to force myself. And I would lay there for like 15, 20 minutes. What I do now is I just imagine myself already downstairs, fully dressed, sipping some coffee, playing with my baby. And I get up like that now. It's just, you got to have a better commercial playing in your brain. And so that's what I would recommend.
That's great. I love that metaphor, or that technique really, of just using a preview of something better that motivates you to make it happen. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What I do is I play music. So like my alarm clock is actually my favorite song. And so like, I don't know why they've invented alarm clocks that are so annoying and god awful to hear, but I guess they think, oh yeah, if it's annoying, it's going to get you up. But it's like, well, I want to get up in a nice, enjoyable, soft way. So my alarm is like my favorite songs. And so I wake up and
Wrecking Ball by Miley Cyrus, right?
Yeah, exactly. Party in the USA.
That's how I get up.
I can get up I get up at 5 and I'm awake and I'm happy and I get out of bed like that because I've created a life that I love so much that I'm so excited to see what manifests.
That's awesome. That's great.
It's the same thing, like putting out the intention, like, oh my God, what am I going to do? What am I going to create? Because I never used to be like this. I used to be the same. Like I can't get out of bed. Whereas now I'm so excited about what's going to manifest, what the day can look like. I get up at my eyes wake up at 5 and I'm like, let's do this.
Yeah. Yeah, because you already have that good commercial playing in your brain. You're just thinking about all the wonderful opportunity out in front of you. So you don't even need to force yourself. And that's where you can learn how to do this with everything, to the point where like you can consciously induce productive flow states just through just intention, through will. And that's really where you move out of grind style productivity. I learned really well how to become very productive the hard way. And it sucks. You can force yourself and get a lot of stuff done, but there's actually a much easier way if you learn how to operate in harmony with yourself. And it sounds like that's what you're tapping into. And I think that's super awesome.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, Laura, it sounds like you made your commercial a full-time reality.
Yeah, my commercial is like a happy Disney movie. It was.
Well, Mark, thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate your time and energy. Tell us, where can people find you? What programs are you doing? What do you got going on right now with your work and your career and your life? Sure.
So you can check out my channel at Universal Man on YouTube, www.youtube.com/universalman. I've got a few different series on there. I got like a playlist called Sexual Self-Mastery series for if you're trying to quit porn. I have a new one that I just done 10 videos on productivity. It's called the Man of Action series. And I've got a new one in the works too, which is more talking about like this higher level, like mindset sort of energy stuff that I touched on here today. So, you can check that out. I've got some different kinds of free guides that you can download, and that would get you on my mailing list and get you, hooked into, all the other stuff I've got going on. But, just check me out on YouTube. And if you like what you see, then download one of the free guides in there. Awesome.
Thanks so much for coming on, Mark. Guys, if you'll see his link right there in the YouTube description box below. Also, if you want to sign up, Laura and I are doing the Sacred Sexuality web series for the next 3 months. We'll be doing more interviews. We still got 9 more interviews planned. So if you haven't signed up for that, check that out in the description box as well. Mark, it's been an honor and a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
Yeah, it was. It was great. Have a great day. All
right, you too.
Thank you.
And everyone, I just want to say we have our last live for today. We're going on at, I believe it's 8:30 p.m. Eastern time.
Yeah, 12:30 Sydney time. So we're going to be going on in about 4.5 hours.
Yep. So 4.5 hours. We'll be going 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. Laura and I are going into what is Tantra. So we're going to continue this conversation, but we're going to come at it from a little bit of a different angle. How to use how to use really energy, sexual energy, and channel that into your life, into how you create relationship, how you create career, whatever it is that you want to create in your life, you can do it. It's just knowing how to channel that energy. And that's really what Tantra is about. So if you guys want to join us, we will be going live here later on today. We'd love to have you. And if you haven't signed up for the series yet, please do. The link is right there in the description box below. Thanks for coming on, everyone. And Laura and I will see you all soon.
See you in a few hours, guys.